Okay. I just talked for a few minutes without even having the camera on. How sad. So maybe I'll be even smarter since I've already talked for 5 minutes without anything happening, because you got to hit the little red button. So happy to see you. Riverland Comp I on September 1st is the day that I'm creating this, the day before class tomorrow, second day of the second week of our strange new school year that I'm still pretty happy to be inhabiting with you. September 1st, we said goodbye to August, and I love this day because I love September, man. I just love having my life all these years tied to the rhythms of the school year. September is one of my favorite months, October even more so. It gets cooler, yeah, swimming weather kind of goes away, but our leaves start to turn and I can see ash trees, even maple trees, tinging a little bit. Sumac, certainly, here in central Minnesota. It's also an ominous day. It is the day, maybe you know, that where we observe the beginning of World War I. It is on this day in 1939 that a bad man, a bad evil dude named Adolf Hitler, decided that he would make an entire country lose its mind, and this is the day that he invaded Poland, a country that I love for reasons that I don't need to go into, and a country also that historically it's just had its nose bloodied one century after another, and those poor, beautiful Polish people, the suffering of it all began today. Also, kind of a preliminary thing before I even preview, my UPS guy just came. Oh, kind of awkward. I hope my computer's okay. My UPS guy just came because all my tech gear is coming. All my cameras and tripods and monitors and all the stuff that I need to do this properly has begun to arrive. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, could he just unbox that right now? Well, I can't. I'm super good at the internet. I understand that unboxing is a thing. But I love you. I love all my classes. But I made a promise to my classical mythology class that all the unboxing would happen in front of them. They made me do it. That's a noon class. It's got 38 students in it. We're like a family already. And a number of the students, they may have already mentioned this. I don't know what I've said or what I haven't said, where or when. A bunch of students in there have already taken classes from me. So we arrived as friends. So it's just got a great vibe, and they made me promise. So even though the big camera came yesterday, I couldn't open it. I have to wait until tomorrow at noon. And so I've got 3 packages, but I'll show you the stuff. And more importantly, that big camera, this stuff is for you. This is the big camera I got. The GoPro 8 is here. The Hero 8 is one I'm just going to goof around with because I need an action camera, like I already told you. But I got the Canon DSLR. It's going to be my main monitor here, or my main camera that I go online with, so I look halfway decent. I'm trying to be good at this, if you can't tell. I have 3 things that I'd like to talk to you about today, and I'm excited about them. The first one has to do with a decision I've made, or more accurately, the reversal of a decision that I made regarding my reading series. I just had an epiphany the other day. I was going on a short little run, 3 miles before class, trying to clear my head so I could do a good job. And I thought, you know what? I'm making a different decision. I'll tell you about that. I got a poet every day. Every time we have class, one of these YouTube classes, I'm going to be naming a great American poet. Not always one that I've hosted, but most often a poet that I've hosted. And why is it that 1 minute your lips are fine and then they're chapped? I mean, I know this is awkward. It's not even gradual. It just happens. It's just instant. It's from talking too much. I want to talk about Charles Simic a little bit today. I cannot believe I got to meet that guy and hang out with him for 2 fantastic days. And we'll spin a little bit of his poetry because I figured out how to patch YouTube into these lessons. Sometimes I'll read the poem for the day. Sometimes we'll let the poet do the work, so you can see their face and hear their voice and the language, the music of it. Today, I'd also like to spend some time talking to you about the origins of rhetoric. Rhetorical theory has, since the beginning, been a big part of the English classes that I teach. We're all rhetorical, and I'll prove that. Rhetoric is, whether it's in the period of antiquity, classical times, whether it's medieval, whether it's modernity these days, in other words, rhetoric is always the study of action. And I don't very often find students that aren't interested in it. And I have kind of a traditional way of kicking that off. And it has to do with three origin stories, three stories. Two of them are kind of make-believe, although they certainly happened. One is definitely something that happened. And there I'll take you to an island called Syracuse, which I believe is in the Mediterranean. And I hope you're doing well down there. And I hope I can get this uploaded without having to go over to St. John's and jack their Wi-Fi like I did yesterday. That felt all right. My old place of work. And it's just really tough on DSL. So here's the thing. I've been hosting a reading series now for 8 years, and it's okay that you've never heard of it. In the Brainerd Lakes region, it's a thing, believe me. I've been getting 1,000 people a year to hear poetry and meet some of the greatest poets that we have on earth. In the pandemic, I had the idea, okay, let's just take a little break. Let's take a little break. Let's just hit the pause button. And I can't really practically host poets. I think we can put 25% capacity-wise in the Charlesburg Theater, where I teach up in Brainerd. And I don't know even how many, I don't even know the percentage. I'm not even going to do the math. This theater holds like 285 people. And I thought, I'm not doing it. Over the weekend, I thought, you know what? I got a lot of money. More than I've ever had before. I have unspent grants. I got 20 grand, and I haven't even written any new applications yet. So my plan was, wait till the pandemic goes away, get back to hosting live poets, and keep writing grants, and then just let the money pile up in unmarked bills in my office. And then I thought, oh, okay, you had cancer this year, right? That's kind of a way of putting before you the fact that you're mortal, that as Borges puts it, we live and die in just a few lines, like characters in Shakespeare. I'm not promised the next 5 minutes. I have the idea that I'll get to keep doing this work for years, but one never knows, do you? We never know when God's going to call us home. And I thought, too, I've got all this money. And I decided over the weekend, you know what? I'm taking my finger off the pause button. I'm going to keep hosting poets. Now, the problem is I'll have to host them virtually. And I know what you're thinking. We're all sick of watching stuff online. And I haven't thought it all through. But if people really are sick of watching stuff online and they don't want to watch a poet read poetry for 40, 45 minutes, well, they can watch Netflix, okay? They can just watch Tiger King or any of the crap that we're all binge watching on. Not me. I don't have a television. Oh, it's gone. I don't. So I'm going to keep going. I've had already a fantastic conversation with a New York rep, Anya, who runs Blue Flower Arts. You could Google that. You could also Google the Barclay Agency in California. Eliza hasn't called me back yet, but I've been working with her for years too. And I'm gonna keep going, either with webinars or with live Zoom readings. I haven't figured out all out yet, but for certain, the fees are way down. You know, I may be able to host a poet that is really famous with like a Pulitzer Prize and a National Book Award for maybe $1,500. They don't have to leave their homes, and if people come, they come, and I'm not going to quit. I'm trying to. I bet you're doing the same. You're just trying to have like a half glass full attitude, because if you let these days bring you down, well, you're going to get discouraged. And we talked about that in the first vid. Trying to stay hopeful and positive, I'm realizing there's possibilities here. I could host poets that live on the other side of the planet. I could host Nikola Medzidov. He lives in Macedonia. What would that airfare be? It doesn't matter. I'm going to host him. I talked on the telephone yesterday with a poet who's becoming a friend of mine, Padre Gotuama. He's stuck in Northern Ireland with visa issues. He is a healer. He is a peacemaker. He's a major poet. He's got this fantastic Irish accent. Northern Ireland. He's already agreed to do it. I might be able to host elderly poets that are retired or semi-retired. Robert Bly, for instance, is on a walker in Minneapolis. He's 93 years old, but I hear he's clear as a bell. And I got a friend that's going to contact him for me, and I bet he reads off of his porch. I'll send my son Jeffy over there, the videographer, and he'll make sure that he looks good while the weather's still nice. So that's my thing. Will it be anywhere near as exciting or satisfying as it's been the last 8 years? No. No, it won't be anything like it. Like going to the airport, picking up the poet, riding down the road with a genius, making them a big feast, having my entire department come, welcoming them with the brunch, getting the NPR ads going, Lakeland Public Television coming and interviewing me and the poet and promoting poetry, the reading, the book signing, the workshop, and then the ride back to the airport and the big poet hug that I always wait for at the end of every event so I can get in the truck and go, man, I did it again. I did it again. I made a bunch of people happy and inspired them. It's better than nothing. It's like this. So thanks for letting me talk about that. Oh, the bonus. I don't know how, I've got some stuff to learn about how many people can carry a Zoom call, but I will make sure that you get the address because you're my precious students in Austin at Riverland College, and you definitely will be part of this because you're my students, and I like my students best. So you'll have the Zoom address, and you'll be able to attend these live literary events that'll be coming in from all over the world. Because I know what I'm doing. It helps to know what you're doing. So anyway, I bet you have a decision or two that you made during the pandemic that you're sticking to, and maybe you've made some decisions in the pandemic that you're going to reverse. Charles Simic is getting to be an older man right now. I'm going to repeat the idea. I cannot believe I got to host and meet this guy. I think he's crowding 80 right now. And I hope he's in okay health. I hosted him in 2014 in the biggest poet year of my life. And we just came to be such friends to the extent that one can over a 2-day period. He loved me. When he was done reading, he was excited about how it had gone. And in the car, I said, okay, Charles, it's a long way to the airport. If I've got a pillow in the back, if you get sleepy, if you want to take a nap, that's fine by me. He said, oh, forget about it. No, we're not sleeping. Let's tell stories. We're telling stories. I'm trying to imitate his accent. I was so excited because it meant 2.5 hours of storytelling with him. And then we hit traffic on 494. Maybe some of you know that stretch of highway. He said, I want to tell you a story about traffic. Paris, France. And anyway, so speaking of World War II, Charles Simic was a little boy in Belgrade, we used to call Yugoslavia. And I'm very sorry to report to you that as a little boy in Belgrade, his mother sometimes had to take her coat when they were walking down the streets of that city and pull the coat over his head so he would not look up and see the Slavic men that were hanging from telephone poles. Luckily, they got out of there, got to Paris, and then somehow made it to Chicago, where he and his brother learned English, watching television shows and eating potato chips. And he joined the army, he became a professor of English, and he's one of the greatest poets America has right now. He lives in Connecticut, and he's been I think he's probably retired from teaching, although when I hosted him, he was still going. And I've already said this, but I want to repeat the idea. Getting fired from the prep school years ago sent me into a kind of personal exile. And I'm interested in that idea. I've always been interested in the idea of exile. Some of the greatest works of literature have been produced by poets who were on the run or exiled from a place that they loved. The most dramatic example of all is Dante Alighieri, who wrote the Divine Comedy, the Inferno, the Purgatorio, and the Paradiso, away from a city that he had been kicked out of, Florence, for political reasons. He got in some trouble there. I don't know if we would have that if he hadn't decided to write that in vernacular Italian instead of Latin. So I'm really, really interested in the idea of exile. I'm interested in refugees and immigrants. And half of the 25 poets that I've hosted You'll find out as we move through the semester for my Verse Like Water series, that's their story. I'm interested in that. I took this idea too far last spring. I ran a Comp 2 thematically on trauma literature. I wanted my students to study art, music, and literature that was created out of some sort of traumatic situation. I was inspired to do that by Kaba Akbar. I was inspired to do that by Peter Balakian, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet whose grandmother was the only person in that family to survive the Armenian genocide of 1915, the very genocide that killed 2.5 million Catholics. And it was the genocide blueprint that Hitler used to enact his horrors. And it was simply too complicated. I started out with fantastic examples. Ray Vaughan Williams conducting his Symphony No. 3 in 1943 at night in the Royal Philharmonic Hall while V-2 rockets were hitting London. He's directing a symphony with bombs going off. How does that work? Okay, it's really hard to... Anyway, here's Charles Simic. Sorry about the arm thing. I'll get it better with the editing and get this eliminated from our experience.
I'll read 3 short poems. Ghosts. It's Mr. Brown looking much better than he did in the morgue. He's brought me a huge carp in a blood-stained newspaper. What an odd visit. I haven't thought of him in years. Linda is with him, and so is Sue. 2 pale and elegant fading memories holding each other by the hand. Even their lipstick is fresh, despite all the scientific proofs to the contrary. Is Linda going to cook the fish? She turns and gazes in the direction of the kitchen while Sue continues to watch me mournfully. I don't believe any of it, and still I'm scared stiff. I know of no way to respond, so I do nothing. The windows are open. The air is thick with the scent of magnolias. Drops of evening rain are dripping from the dark and heavy leaves. I take a deep breath. I close my eyes. Dear specters, I don't even believe you are here. So how is it you are making me comprehend things I would rather not know just yet? It's the way you stare past me at what must already be my own ghost before taking your leave as unexpectedly as you came in without one of us breaking the silence. Thank you. A New Hampshire poem, Country Fair. If you didn't see the 6-legged dog, it doesn't matter. We did, and he mostly lay in the corner. As for the extra legs, one got used to them quickly and thought of other things, like, what a cold, dark night to be out at the fair. Then the keeper threw a stick, and the dog went after it on 4 legs, the other 2 flapping behind, which made one girl shriek with laughter. She was drunk, and so was the man who kept kissing her neck. The dog got the stick and looked back at us, and that was the whole show. Sunday papers. The butchery of the innocent never stops. That's about all we can ever be sure of, love. Even more sure than of this roast you are bringing out of the oven. It's Sunday. The congregation files slowly out of the church across the street. A good many carry Bibles in their hands. It's the vague desire for truth and the mighty fear of it that makes them turn up despite the glorious spring weather. In the hallway, the old mutt just now had the honesty to growl at his own image in the mirror before lumbering off to the kitchen where the lamb roast sat in your outstretched hands, smelling of garlic and rosemary. Thank you.
Well, I'm back. For me, that was only a second, but I know you watched a video of Charles Simic reading 3 poems at the Dodge Festival, Poetry Festival. I told Charles Simic to his face, dude, I don't read your poetry. It gives me nightmares. It really, really does. What I read of his, and I probably got a dozen of them in my other study, my glass porch, I read his memoir, his memoirs. I love those. Sip of juice. Okay, this is one of those things where, it's one of those moments where, actually every moment I truly wish we were in a classroom. I wish I could see you and meet you and talk to you and shake your hand and stuff. But I know there's going to be segments like this where it's going to be even harder, where my normal, ordinary way of doing business isn't possible. So just imagine a classroom, imagine a beautiful one. And I want to get you thinking rhetorically. And the way I do it in a regular classroom, I always choose 2 young men. Football players are the best for it. They tend to flunk my classes, but I'll pick out a couple of big dudes. Football's canceled at my college. I'll bet it's the same down there. And I'll have them face the class. And let's just call them Ryan and Jake. And I'll say to the class, okay, I want you to imagine these guys 20,000 years ago. Ryan is walking along the Mississippi River, the river I grew up on, and he's hungry, man. He hasn't eaten in a while. It's, he's having trouble finding food. And Ryan's walking along the bank of the Mississippi River, and suddenly Jake comes out of a little clearing, and Jake's got an apple, this big, beautiful red apple. And he's about to take a bite out of it. And then I ask the class, okay, what happens next? And they almost always go straight to violence. Unless it's a woman, they go straight to the idea, that scenario, that's what they do. And a student will raise their hand and say, well, Ryan sees Jake, he sees him with the apple, and he beats him down, and he grabs it. And so that's sort of the end of the deal. And then I say the obvious, and it's never been more important to bring this up given what's going on in our country right now. I tell them, if that happens, if the one young man uses violence and fights to get the apple, that is not rhetoric. That is not rhetorical at all. That's just thuggery, okay? And then I tell the story the way I wanted it to go. And even though we are having a lot of trouble with this in our country right now, I say if Ryan approaches Jake, I've already forgotten which was which, but if the one boy approaches the other and says, hey, I see you've got an apple. You know, I know where there's some berries growing along the river, and a friend of mine ate them and he didn't die. How about this? You split that apple with me. We'll go check out these berries together and maybe catch some fish. And then we'll have a lunch together. We'll eat a balanced diet and maybe evolve a little bit. Now that's rhetoric. That's language. That's persuasion. That's a gentle argument. And I wish everything would go like that. And students start nodding and going, okay, we get that. It's not hard. Studying rhetoric is not hard. I think it's fun. I always pick out a young man for this example too. I'm not sure why. Who did I pick out last year? Oh, Dominic Giamello, who's taking his third class from me, Navy veteran. I was so happy to see his face on the, or actually his name on the roster, and I love every student, but I love him more when I get to know him. So a year ago, I picked out this kid named Dom, who's kind of shy. It's even more funny when it's shy. And I went over to him and I said, this is the second origin story, by the way. I said, Dom, how old are you? He's a little bit older than most of the PSEO students in the room. He said, I'm 22. I said, Dom, do you remember where you were 21 and a half years ago? And of course, he had no idea. And I said, I know where you were, Dom. I know exactly where you were. You'll remember that you'd been napping and you woke up and you weren't in a very good situation. You were hungry. You'd been sleeping for a couple hours in the middle of the day. And on top of that, man, I'm sorry to remind you of this. On top of that, additionally, your diaper was just full of poop, okay? And your butt's starting to itch. Bad situation. Do you remember what you did then, Dom? The kid laughed. He said, I think I remember crying. And I said, yes, Dom, you cried. You cried. You cried out. You cried, and the door opened up, and someone came in to take care of you. It might have been your dad. Could have been a beautiful woman, otherwise known of as your mom. And she cleaned you up and got you something to eat and put you in your high chair and gave you some yogurt and Cheerios to mess around with on the tray. And life was good for a while until you got hungry and re-pooped in your diaper. Babies poop 2,000 times in the first 10 months. Almost no one knows that. No reason not to start up a family. So now it's coming out a little clearer. Now the students and you are realizing that when I say rhetoric is the study of action, it is the study of how you are acting on the world and how the world is acting on you, okay? It never ends, ever, as long as we are alive. Little babies who don't even know language know that the world is rule governed, and if they call out cause effect, causality wise, something will happen. It's the beginning of everything. We begin to be rhetorical creatures before we can even speak. It begins. Now I'm getting near the end of what I want to talk about today, and the good news is, while these first examples were imagined, make-believe, even though I know they happen billions of times, there is a real, true origin story involving rhetoric. And anyone who studies classical rhetoric, it's probably not brought up at undergrad classes, but if you go to graduate school, you're going to hear about this dude. And it's the story of a man named Corax of Syracuse. There were so few people back then, you only needed one name. And I don't even know if Corax had a last name, but here's the situation. What happened about 8 centuries before Christ in Syracuse was that a tyrant took over the island and trashed all the public records, okay? It's a real true thing. Whether it's a tyrant 8 centuries before Christ or an administrator, I've seen it. Many leaders, the more tyrannical they are, the meaner they are, the more this will happen. The more they want history to begin with them. Almost no one knows that the emperor that started the Great Wall of China, yeah, nice accomplishment, but when that guy became emperor, he ordered that all books that had been published before he became the emperor should be burned. And he also created an edict that proclaimed that anyone who was caught reading anything published before he became the emperor would be killed. And that happened tons of times. He wanted, again, some leaders want history to begin with them, and that was true of that tyrant. Well, the tyrant went the way of all tyrants. They rose up against him and killed him, and there was chaos. And I don't know every detail of the story, but I've read about it more than once. And one of the problems was that in the destruction of all the public records in an agrarian society, these farmers didn't exactly knew who owned what. And all the trouble of the world is about real estate. And so when it came time to get reorganized after this bad dude got killed, there was trouble because this is 8 centuries before law as a profession had been invented. And these poor farmers had to argue in front of the tribunal of elders, right? That's not a metaphor. That's how it went in those days. If you wanted to sue somebody or you thought you had been done wrong, you just imagine a bunch of elders sitting around in togas and sandals. You had to speak in public. And Corax was a pretty smart man. He was a merchant, trafficked in wine and oil. He was watching these farmers just get wiped out. And this is the heartwarming part. I love this story. Corax set up the first school of rhetoric. I always imagine it happening on a beach, and I don't know why. I just see Corax standing with the water coming in and the sunshine and the gulls singing away. And I imagine him gathering these farmers together and saying, okay, you guys, listen to me. When you go in to argue about where the property lines are for your little farm, I want you to do this. I want you to say this. And I want you to argue in this way. I want you to gesture like this. He basically trained them to speak in public. And they were successful. And the reasons why it's heartwarming is because it makes me think of my connection across the centuries to all the teachers that have ever tried to help young people become more graceful and eloquent with language. I can't think of many more important things to think about and study in school. And I don't have a toga. I'm not in Syracuse. I'm in a comfortable, cute little house in a peat bog. And we don't have a classroom. We don't have a beach. We don't have E339. We're not meeting down in Austin. But from my heart, I'm going to try to help you all understand more about rhetorical theory, how to enlist right rhetoric in the world to fulfill the things that are worth fulfilling. Desires, at least the good ones, the ones that I would say are virtuous. I feel like I'm falling apart here at this. It's not the 11-minute mark because I've got the other video and my preamble, so to speak. But that's the beginning of it. And when I don't think I'll do it today because I want you to know that I got a ton of different shirts. I think that's not true either. Why did I lie? I just lied. I never lie to students. The next thing I'll do for certain is bump us up 3 centuries from the 8th century to a century I'd go to right now if I could bring my toothbrush and my wife and my pickup and all my guitars. And that is the 5th century Athens, one of my favorite places to visit historically in memory. And that is where let me just save that for my next lesson that I'll shoot on Thursday. I'm trying to shoot these for you the day before we meet, so to speak. I put up today your journal entries for the week. I'm way behind on reading entries, but the next couple days I'm really going to go after that because if I don't get those read and responded to by the next hailstorm of writing that's coming my way this Friday night, I am going to be in big trouble. So you can expect some feedback really, really fast. I also put up, what else did I put up? Oh yeah, I put up a little literacy narrative. I love studying writers and thinking about them and meeting them and wondering about them. I'm an English major. And I think it's a natural born thing for me to be interested in literacy narratives. I've already written about it. Accounts that writers give us of how they got going as writers. It's really a standard question. When I'm in the Chalberg and a writer gets done and we have a Q&A, which we do kind of like every other time, depending upon the comfort of the writer, inevitably someone will raise their hand and I've got to run to them with the microphone and I'll give the microphone to the kid or the patron or the community member. It's really one of the first questions people ask of the famous writers that I've brought to my college and to the Brainerd Lakes region. How'd you get started as a writer? What inspired you to get going? Every writer has seen that question like a billion times, but they always answer it sweetly with goodwill and curiosity. So, wow, I've got some editing to do, don't I? And again, I bet you're tired of me. Here comes the hand again, hitting the little red button that stops the vid. But let me get this edited, and I'm going to do an experiment today. I'm the keeper of a church, Immaculate Conception, in St. Anna, where I'm also the Faith Formation Director. And I'm going to try something. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to see how fast the upload is at McDonald's. All of a sudden, I've got a new hobby. Cruising around and seeing who's got great Wi-Fi that I could upload videos through to get to you, so we can make this happen. Be well, stay well, be peaceful in the pandemic. I'll see you again on Friday.